So I think a lot of people here are probably aspiring or actual writers. Or if you're writing, you're a writer. You're not an aspiring writer. An aspiring writer is someone who gets an idea and doesn't write it. That's an aspiring writer. If you're writing, congratulations, all of you are now authors. You're just not published yet. One of the things we wanted to talk about in terms of how you get started writing is that you sit down and you do it. You need to finish it, treat it like a job, make it a priority. You're never too busy to do something you care about. In your life, you have X hours that are not sleep and work. You need to sit and think about your priorities. If working out is important, on a scale of 10, is it a 7 or a 3? If writing is important, if becoming an author is your passion and your dream, is it a 7 or a 3? Is watching a Friends rerun a 7 or a 3? You can make the time in your life to do these things. You can write your novel, you can finish your novel, and be a writer.
Well, for me, for example, I wrote the first 1.5 books of my trilogy over my lunch hour at work.
Yeah, we all have day jobs, by the way.
We still do have day jobs.
We haven't started making money enough yet,
But that's the thing, is that every time that I have a break at work, I'm writing. You know, so it can be done. It's not always fun, but as long as you're putting words down on paper, that's a very, very good thing, and it just needs to become a habit. I've gotten to the point now I can bust out 2,000 words over my lunch break if I need to. It just depends on how well it's flowing, and you just have to make the time for that. And there's going to be times when you're like, well, you know, I kind of just want to go talk to my coworkers, and you have to balance that. Sometimes you need to sacrifice it, but for the most part, it just sometimes if they just need to understand, I got to get my word count in. And setting daily goals is a good thing too. And it doesn't have to be, 2,000 words. That can be very intimidating. It can be 50 words. It can be 1 page. Find what works for you, set that goal, and try to meet it as much as possible.
Well, and everybody does it differently, because I have like a weekly allotment of words because my life's pretty busy. So my goal is to hit my weekly allotment. Some days I do more, some days I do none. It just depends on what life's going on, got going on for me. And, as far as me deciding to write, I just said, I'm going to do it, and I did it. And it just literally took me sitting down and writing and meeting those word goals and treating them like a job versus like, I'm going to beat this level on this Xbox game, right? I mean, that was the difference for me, is just sitting down and going, yeah, I'm going to get 5,000 words by the end of this week, and then the next week I'm going to have 10,000 words. So, everybody does it a little differently, but I find that for me, treating it like a job and scheduling it and fitting it in just because of my personality works the best.
I read through a transcript of a speech that was given by the people who were in charge of Amazon and Kindle. They were talking about how the whole nature of a pitch. I don't know if you guys are familiar what a pitch is. A pitch is basically when you're talking to a publisher or a producer or somebody, and you basically tell them your concept, your idea. And the idea of that pitch has gone from what used to be you schedule a meeting, you sit down with them, and you talk to them, and you tell them, hey, I have an idea for a great story. I think you'll love it. It's going to be like this, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. You have like the whole pitch idea. But pitches now have progressed to where you have to be able to give what they call an elevator pitch, and they have, like, the idea is you should have your idea ready to be expressed at any given time, because you don't know. With the way the internet has made people more interconnected, you don't know when the person who might be interested in your project, might be interested in reading your project, or whatever, might be right there ready to hear your idea. It's a much more informalized process now. It's not the days of having to send your book off to a publisher, wait for them to go through their slush pile, and then process the slush pile down to a few better, more guaranteed hits, and then gets sent off to some editing staff to review it and see if they could market it, and then get back to you and your agent and see if they want it. That whole process is gone. It still exists, but you don't need it.
Hey, Ren, how long did it take for them to get you your responses when you were sending your query letters? What was the average time?
My average for query letters, I did about 2 years ago when I first came up with my first book, I sent off about 24 query letters, and average response times anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. I sent one copy of my manuscript to one publishing house, which I won't name, just because they said no. That would just be laughing now. And it took them 7 months to get back to me with a thank you, but we don't know quite what to do with this. It's great, but we don't know what to do with it. And in the space of that time, I put out 3 more books. And now, whereas like the normal publishing process, I don't know how many of you are familiar with how publishing like traditionally works right now, is it takes from the writing time to the editing time to the marketing time to the distribution time, anywhere from 6 months to 18 months to go from an idea to a book on the shelf. Which, if you're working within like trends, like if you want to write a book that's kind of like Hunger Games, because Hunger Games is hot right now, you can have that book on the shelf digitally, and as long as it would take you to write it, edit it, and print up a nice cover for it, which could be a month and a half. Or you could go the old school way and have it out on the shelves in 2013. Maybe. And it just, there's a little bit more. Granted, key is find a very nice editor who is very skilled and accepts flattery well.
And who's willing to kick your butt.
I was going to say, I disagree. Yeah. Nice. Maybe nice when you're having coffee, but do you want that editor to be hard, right? Steely, in fact, because you want them to stand up to you, because it's easy for you to get really absorbed in your creation and say, no, it has to be this way. And the editor has to be like, no, it's not good enough to be that way, or it needs to be expanded upon.
I'm not saying me and Kim haven't had our fights. I know that there's at least one character who was supposed to die, and I fought.
Fated you guys for death.
No, not so much.
That's an ongoing saga.
Still, the books are done. Right?
I'm gonna win
done. And she's
someday.
Like, the character's supposed to die. I'm like,
everybody dies.
The books are done. Sorry. Ha! He survived. Or she survived. Or somebody survived.
For now.
So, spoiler alert.
Thanks.
No, you know what? I just know that one person doesn't actually die.
There's more than one guy in the book.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, that kind of ties into what we were actually kind of here for. One thing we noticed a while back, oddly, coincidentally, all of us wrote our books around a central female character, which is kind of like, I guess, actually kind of why we're here today, which was kind of weird. And everybody's like, how did that happen? How did we all like find it's an odd coincidence. We all happened to write a central, strong female character.
Yeah, and oddly, it wasn't something we planned.
No.
We were working on these projects individually before we even created Talaria, so it was just kind of a strange synergy that occurred between the 3 of us. So, I mean, for me, because it does play into the ancient Egyptian mythology, when it comes to the ancient world, ancient Egypt was really quite feminist in its way. Women were not property. In fact, they were commonly the owners of property. They ran businesses. They were in positions of power that most places in the ancient world they would never have been able to attain. So, to make that a central theme to a superhero, that would be awesome. And when I was 19, I went to Chicago and I visited the Field Museum of Natural History. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but they have a phenomenal Egypt area. They have interactive displays. You can actually, use the irrigation system that they have there. You can walk through a tomb. And the night after I went there, I actually dreamed of this character that I named Nuru Sekhmet, which translates into Sekhmet's light. And I was like, wow, that is a great character. And she stuck with me all this time. And I knew that I had to write about her, but I didn't quite know how to get her story out. The initial draft of Sekhmet's Light was a standalone novel in first person, and frankly, it sucked. I brought it to NorwestCon in 2003 to do the Fairwood Writers Conference, and I got great feedback. They're like, oh, this is a great idea, but it needs to be third person, because I want to see her. I want to see what she looks like. I want to see what this armor looks like. I want to see more. So, again, I attacked it as a standalone, changing it to third person. And finally, it dawned on me But the reason I was having such a hard time is because it's supposed to be a series, not just one book. And it very much follows the hero's journey, where, you know, you have the origin story in the first book, and then the adventures follow. And from there, it flowed much more easily. And I had this one every day going, did you write today? Did you write today? Well, why not? So I think that when you find an idea like that that just won't die, it definitely warrants investigation, and you just got to stick with it and find how to get your voice out there.
That's actually a great segue. We wanted to open to some questions about writing process. Does anybody have any questions about writing your editorial process that you have burning within you? Any examples from your own writing that you had any questions about?
We don't bite.
I'm going to ask one of the questions. At the beginning, Leanna, you said that you were making your books how people now find them accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get into more detail about that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you find in traditional publishing, and the way a lot of books are marketed and sold now, is that there's this resistance to change, and it's throughout all portions of a lot of bigger industries. You know, the music industry, the publishing industry, they had this system that worked really great for a long time, and now that system's starting to shift. And part of the problem is Kindle books. People want to read books in the medium that they're interested in, whether that's Kindle or whether that's print. And you have to respond to that need. There's also, at the same time, different marketing pressures. You know, years ago, when iTunes first came about, Apple went and they did all this research, and they said, how much would you pay for one song and actually buy it and actually want it, even if it's like covered in DRM and you can only burn it 4 times and so you only sort of own it, but how much would you pay? And people said they pay 99 cents and that's it. No more than 99 cents. The same thing happened in the ebook market. When Amazon was releasing the Kindle and really trying to push ebooks, they did a lot of research on how much would people pay for an ebook of regular length, $10. There's some resistance from publishing companies who are saying, but no, you know, we spent this advertising money, plus we're used to getting this much money per book when they're print books, and never mind that their infrastructure is different with an ebook than a print book, there's still this resistance to that kind of change. One of the things that we at Talaria want to do is make sure that we're providing books to people in whatever format they want. When people come to us all the time and they want to buy the cover art from a book, it's like, yes, we can sell you the cover art from our book. You can get a poster of that. If someone comes to us and says, oh, it's great you have these Kindle books, but we need a book for Nook. Well, that's great, because we can do that. And we can respond to even individual Twitter requests or Facebook questions lightning quick, because we're able to be for people who are collecting the profits of all of our own works, basically for ourselves, with almost no overhead. If you want a print copy of the book, we can have that printed for you, as opposed to printing millions of them and having to give up warehouse space and, you know, union workers. It's a completely different model, and something we're really committed to, because things are never going to stay the same. These things are constantly changing. And as an author, you should be considering, what is this going to look like as a Kindle book? If this cover is so dark, it looks great printed, but it looks terrible on a Kindle in black and white, then that's something you should think about. You need to make sure that you're tailoring what you're doing for the formats that people are interested in receiving them.
And it sounds really labor intensive, but it's really, really not, I promise you.